Hello and welcome. My name is Roger Quayle, and you are listening to My Life in the Mosh of Ghosts. Hello and welcome back to My Life in the Mosh of Ghosts. My name is Roger Quayle. Thank you for joining me. If you are a regular listener, you may remember that I talked about the Stunt Kites, Sheffield's finest punk band, in Gig 13. Today's episode goes back to the Stunt Kites and a series of gigs that they did between April and September in 1979. Hardcore grammar fans may also notice that this episode is entirely in the past tense, rather than the historic present. So here we go then, it's the Stunt Kites, at 9 gigs in various venues in Sheffield, Retford and Barnsley, covering April to September 1979. My Summer of Punk. The Easter school holidays, and a teenage gathering for Stunt Kite co-founder, school pal and punk rock charmer Steve Chapman's 18th birthday. The evening started in the Bay Horse in Pittsmore, one of our regular haunts, and then moved to our new favourite city boozer, the Howard Inn, down between the Polytechnic and the railway station. Talk, as usual in our clan of wannabe singers and strummers, revolved around music. Steve expressed his admiration for Lou Reed's exercise in sonic torment, metal machine music, and how his band, on the eve of their first demo session, might just emulate it.
We should make an album of crackles, and at the end just say, "You fucking suckers."
The great rock and roll swindle, alive and well in Sheffield. The following Thursday, I accompanied the Stunt Kites, Steve, John Allen, longtime buddy Brent, plus Rennie and Mick, to verdant Nether Edge on the other side of Sheffield. John and Steve were friends with Addy and Judd from ClockDVA. Addy had a Revox reel-to-reel tape recorder and had offered to produce the Stunt Kites demo. Brent borrowed my drums for this session. This was the second attempt to record this week. Tuesday's visit to Thornset Road having been abandoned due to the quarter-inch tape being faulty. It gave us impressionable, callow lads a second opportunity to marvel at Addy's cool, minimalist ground floor flat. An understated mix of painted floorboards, black leather furniture and books on modern art. To us, this appeared impossibly sophisticated. We were mostly still living with mums and dads. The Stunt Kites put down 5 of their best songs: Dead Boys, The Enemy, Made in Hong Kong, Fool's Paradise and Suburbia. Wednesday the 18th of April, and the Stunt Kites played the Broadfield in Healy. The last time I had seen them live in concert was just before Christmas, supporting Exit, the school band I played in with Vinna, Wilma and Lango. This had turned out to be Exit's final gig. For some reason, Rennie had been absent from the Stunt Kites lineup that night in December. Reunited at the Broadfield, they were an unstoppable force, a battering ram of bruising intent. 0 to 100 miles an hour in less than 3 seconds. Every song a headlong rush of concentrated energy. Afterwards, John Allen was at his E.L. Whisty-like best.
Did you know they killed 100 hamsters filming Tales of the Riverbank? Their little corpses littered the whole of the Surrey countryside.
The first Friday in May, and despite my best efforts on the previous day, at both the polling booth and the record shop, my votes for Labour and being boiled by the Human League failed to prevent a Tory victory spearheaded by Maggie Thatcher. A more immediate problem was dealing with the clean-up of the post-election wake I'd hosted, taking advantage of my parents being away on holiday. Angry neighbours, cigarette burns on the carpet, a nasty yellow stain on the kitchen lino, and a Stunt Kite and his fiancée in the parental chamber staging a John and Yoko bed-in. The following Friday, I joined the unholy agglomeration of sex, leather and industrial noise known as ClockDVA. A new human rhythm generator replacing their drum machine. A proper group. No working men's clubs, no cover versions. This was a serious outfit. Addy gave me a couple of cassettes to start to learn the songs. The handcrafted inlay card displayed a montage of Mons Pubis. Terrified that my mom might see these, Addy's labour of love artwork was hastily stashed away on the 97 bus home. Later that night, there was a party at Vinner's house. John Allen had become engaged to Donna, love's young dream, both 18 and still in school. The mood was relaxed, a sitting around, drinking, talking and future dreaming party, unlike some of the wild nights that Vinner had previously hosted. The TV was on, and we were half watching Tippi Hedren being tormented something rotten by Alfred Hitchcock and his aviary of evil.
Let's have a laugh.
Steve Chapman picked up the Vinner house phone and dialed 6 random numbers. A bit of shushing and the room fell silent, apart from the distant sound of a ringing tone far away. A gruff Sheffield accent.
Hello?
Good evening. This is the ITV Census Board. Do you mind if I ask you a couple of questions?
What's the want?
Are you watching the birds at the moment?
Yeah?
So, who is your favourite Hitchcock blonde? Tippi Hedren, Janet Leigh, or Grace Kelly?
The what? Are they taking piss?
Look, we're just having a laugh, all right.
Monday the 25th of June, and I registered unemployed for the first time, joining the ranks of the 1.4 million out of work. The Dole office in Sheffield was located on West Street, halfway between the Limit Club and the Beehive, a popular pub with Sheffield's left field musicians. The rest of the day was spent watching Wimbledon and fretting over the US Senate signing the SALT II treaty. That night, the Stunt Kites played at Bar 2 in the university, and as a loyal friend and fan, I went along. I'd last seen them just 2 weeks earlier, a welcome distraction from the rigours of A-level exams, as they ripped through a vibrant set of buzzsaw punk to an appreciative crowd at the Marples pub. But at Bar 2, they were barely recognisable as the same band. A shambolic shower of false starts, sloppy songs and drunken intent. Paralysed fools wrestling with Fool's Paradise, too stoned to play their own music, which thrived on discipline and fire. A Saturday night in July, and a party at Richard Nicklin's house in Attercliffe. School had finished a month ago, and the graduates of the class of 79 were still a jigsaw puzzle of friendships before pieces started to be lost to university, jobs and marriage. Suddenly, it seemed to me that everyone was self-consciously acting adult, old before their time, as if childish impulses should have been folded away forever with the school blazer and tie. A dull party, memorable only for hearing the glacial splendour of neon lights by Kraftwerk in full for the first time. Bored with the stifling trivia of university options, I hopped on a bus into town to meet up with the Stunt Kites, who had ambitious plans to play 2 gigs in one night. I had already seen them once that week. They had supported ClockDVA on a sweltering summer night at the Marples on Wednesday, my first ever gig with the band, riven with tension, in front of a packed crowd of Impress Me onlookers. I found the Kites at the Mount Pleasant Community Centre in Healy, a hoofed long ball clearance away from United's Bramall Lane, playing to a bunch of young teens and a smattering of right-on grown-ups at a benefit for SCAN, School Kids Against the Nazis. But no sooner had I arrived than they started packing up their gear and started to cart it around the corner to the Broadfield pub, half a mile down the road. By the time I arrived at the second venue, their guitars, amps and drums were half in, half out of the pub. The Stunt Kites were late, said the landlord. Should have been here an hour ago. And they couldn't play. A collective "sod this" and we all trooped back to the community centre. A reasonable number of kids were still hanging around at Mount Pleasant. There wasn't a lot to do in Healy on a Saturday night, and they were delighted to see this ramshackle crew of punk rockers and their attendant entourage dragging their gear back through the door. Hacked off and amped up, the Stunt Kites proceeded to rock and rage with acetylene intensity and were gleefully celebrated by their snotty acolytes. What a thrill to witness the instant transmission of swirling sonic vortex direct to teenage cortex. Clattering drums, clashing cymbals, rumbling bass and tinnitus threatening guitars, with John Allen howling over the top, a man consumed by the blaze he and his cohorts had ignited. A couple of hours later, we were sitting around, knocking back a few cans and watching Basil Rathbone as Sherlock Holmes on late night telly. The decompression period from demonic punk rockers to plain daft lads completed. Fanciful riffs on popular culture were being tossed around by Steve and John.
My name is Frank Stapleton, and I've been breeding bloody hounds to maim and kill now for 15 years, all on pedigree chum.
Can you imagine a low-budget version? The vole of the Baskervilles. Oh, don't go down to the reed beds tonight, my dear.
Punk rock, pogoing kids, and Pythonesque silliness. Surely more fun than listening to ex-school colleagues dissecting the relative merits of the campuses at Warwick and Exeter. Friday the 24th of August, and a road trip. My first time seeing the Stunt Kites away from our home turf, as a motley motorcade made the 35-mile trip to the market town of Retford. The Porterhouse venue had a similar booking policy to Sheffield's Limit Club. Simple Minds, Joe Jackson and the B-52s had all passed through in the months previous. I was feeling good, still riding high on the reaction to my first London gig with ClockDVA a couple of weeks ago, which had earned positive reviews from The Enemy and Melody Maker. The DHSS paid enough to keep me in new vinyl, beer money and the odd splash out on an £8 suit from the Sue Ryder charity shop. So when a couple of guys came up to me in Retford and said, "Hey, you're the drummer from ClockDVA, aren't you?" I did my best to affect an air of nonchalance. Yeah, that's right. Did you see us at the YMCA in London?
No, we saw you drumming for the Stunt Kites at the Penthouse in Sheffield.
Oh, right. Thanks. Busted, but true enough. Just after DVA's London gig, I had covered for Brent while he was on holiday. Delighted to be playing straight boom crack crash punk rock drums, surging like a tidal bore as we tore through the set. And they paid me £1.60 for my efforts. That night in Retford, the Stunt Kites delivered another set of fearless punk rock fury, only to be outgunned by headliners The Invaders, new wave protégés of Jimmy Percy from Sham 69. Playing at deafening volume, they presented thunderous evidence of a Polydor advance well spent on a top-of-the-range backline. And so to Thursday the 13th of September, and the second night of a Stunt Kites micro tour. Last night they played the Penthouse Club in Sheffield with Short Circuit and the very impressive I'm So Hollow. And Thursday saw them travel up the road to Barnsley, and I cadged a lift in the convoy. The band had been invited to play by local comedy glam hobbits Y, with a question mark, later to become comedy goth hobbits Dance Society. Had they spent as much time in rehearsal as they clearly did at the Boots makeup counter, then Y, with a question mark, might have been a force to be reckoned with. In fairness, a rummage in the dressing up box for Bowie's cast-offs was a reasonably brave act for a night out in Barnsley, populated as it was by macho coal miners into Saxon, denim and leather. Per capita, suggested John Allen, looking out at the punk peacocks displayed in front of the stage for Y's set. I reckon there are more posers in Barnsley than there are in Sheffield. Come the hour for the Stunt Kites set, all those pretty things had vanished into the Dearne Valley night. It was last bus time to Womwell, Elsica and Grimethorpe for all the little Iggies and Ziggies, leaving the kites to play to a handful of mates and designated drivers from 10 miles down the road. The final score was South Yorkshire Transport 1, Stunt Kites 0. Thank you for listening. This episode is dedicated to the memory of Steve Chapman. May he rest in peace. Thanks also to Brent and John for the guest voices, to Simon Elliott Kemp for the intro and outro music, and to Rionagh for the artwork. My name is Roger Quayle. See you again next time for another episode of My Life in the Mosh of Ghosts. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.